Usually I can see the whole thing. There we go. I believe so. She's gonna. There you go. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and call this meeting to order. It is October 3rd, 2024. This is our regularly scheduled City of Glenwood Springs City Council meeting. I welcome all who are here. Go ahead and roll.
Thank you, Mayor Wusso. Mayor Wusso.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Dame. Councilor Godis. Councilor Zelinski. Councilor Weimer. And for the last time, Councilor Kaup. We have a quorum.
Do we have any agenda changes and conflicts? Councilor Godis.
Yeah, I'd like to ask that we move agenda item on the consent agenda, chamber contract for tourism onto the regular agenda.
Okay, we'll go ahead and move that. We're gonna pop that right before item number 13 under actions and or presentations. Okay. Any council announcements? Yep. Councilor Zelinski.
I have just a few centering around kind of our Parks and Rec department. The Ghost Walk, that starts this week. And so then also mark your calendars for Noche Latina. That is coming up on the 12th of October between 4 and in Bethel Plaza downtown. Between 4 and 6 are kind of more family events. And then from 6 to 9, live music and dancing. And then also on the 14th of October, which is a Monday, the rec center is having their fall free for all. So that's like a free event for the whole community to come down, experience some of the different, offerings that the rec center has and, get to tour the facility, explore your options and possibly join up.
Perfect. I have a slide. I'm going to have them pop it up. Recently, this council has been very committed to communication within the community, making sure that the community knows everything we have going on in advance. With that in mind, we have this is a little snapshot for those of you at home. Take a screenshot or a picture. For those of you here, get out your phones. We can all be reached with one email. So if you are emailing rather than individually emailing us, just email City Council at cogs.us. Sign up for emergency alerts at garco911.com. And if you want to stay informed for the city of Glenwood, just cogs.us/info. What that's going to send you is a little overview of what council is going to have. It's a whole access to our packet prior to the meetings. It'll also send you a recap of what was decided. So you're going to have access to what we're talking about. So you know if you want to show up for the meetings, but you're also going to get an overview in the event that you didn't. So you know what we're up to. So more and more we've always been committed to making sure you know what's happening, but we have received feedback that we can do better. So this is us attempting to stay in touch. If there are other ways you think we should also be connecting, we use that City Council at cogs.us and let us know. So thank you so much. Any other council announcements? Okay. Any citizens appearing before council? This is for items that are not on this evening's agenda. Anybody here for items not on this evening's agenda? We'll close that and bring it back to council for a proclamation honoring Councilor Kaup. And what an honor it is to give you that. A proclamation honoring the service of Councilor Shelley Kaup. Whereas Councilor Shelley Kaup was elected to her first term on City Council in 2007. And whereas Councilor Kaup has ultimately served 11 years serving on City Council. And whereas Councilor Kaup has a passion for community planning with an emphasis on community strength and efficiency. Shelley earned her BS in civil engineering from the University of Colorado in Boulder and her MS in sustainable engineering from Villanova University, Philadelphia, PA. And whereas Councilor Kaup in 2013 became a certified sustainability manager through the Institute of Art and Design. And whereas Counselor Kaup has raised a wonderful family and run a successful business in our community. And whereas Counselor Kaup has served as liaison for numerous city boards and commissions, currently the Arts and Culture Board, the Transportation Commission, the Housing Commission, the River Commission, the Workforce Housing Fund Board, and whereas Counselor Kaup was elected the RAFTA Board Chair in February of 2024. And whereas the loyal service of Counselor Kaup has positioned Glenwood Springs for a resilient future and made significant positive impact on the community through her exceptional leadership and guidance of our community. Therefore, it be resolved, I, Ingrid Wuso, Mayor of Glenwood Springs and the state of Colorado, do hereby recognize and express our sincere and true appreciation to Counselor Shelley Kaup for her longstanding commitment to serving our community. We have some gifts for you this evening. Yeah. Thank you. We know you're officially going to be retired after this, so we were worried you wouldn't be able to keep track of the time. So you get a clock. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
We'll do it later.
Jonathan.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, Shelley, thank you so much for your service. Thank you for serving this council from 2007 to 2011. Thank you for being up here, for doing the hard work for this community, for making tough decisions, even when they weren't popular. Thank you for working with me personally. You've made me a better counselor. You've been a friend. You still are a friend. And I just think this community is in a really great place because of the leadership that you've provided for the last over 15 years on and off. Even Transportation Commission, it's not like you jumped off of council or jumped into council in 2007 from nowhere. You were super involved in boards and commissions, and you're going to be missed up here. I hope you continue to make your voice heard in other ways. Because it's an important voice and it's a voice that is well respected. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, and I'm going to say one thing too. I did read the proclamation, but I just want to say thank you because I learned so much from you in both your temperament up here and your passion for the community. We always say in council and in politics that it's always wise not to bring an agenda, and you don't bring an agenda. You bring a passion for your community and a commitment for making good decisions for the future. And it was so evident that you thought so high. You were at that 30,000 foot and you moved forward and you made such progress that I hope you get to see the benefit of your stewardship to this community in years to come. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yep. I'll speak a little bit. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the clock and the kind words and the proclamation. It's I appreciate it a lot. And I truly being honest when I say, you know, it's been my highest honor to serve this city. I've done it out of love and just wanting to make the city a better place. And hopefully that's worked for people. I've really enjoyed serving with this council and every council staff. I have so much regard and respect for you all and how hard you work all the time and everyone who serves on city commissions. And so I have to put a plug in, you know, serving the community at the local level is a lot of fun and it's nonpartisan and it's such a great way to make a difference and your voice can really make a difference. So for anybody out there who may have a little extra time on their hands or just wants to be involved, if you have a passion, you know, there are boards and commissions for everything from the arts to the budget to traffic and transportation and housing, and your voice matters. You know, we need a lot of diverse voices at the table, young and old, and all different nationalities and residents of our community. It can make a big difference. So get involved and help guide the future. You won't regret it. And I've really grown from it and I appreciate it. And I'll miss it. So we'll miss you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Shani.
Thank you.
Thanks. Want to take that? Okay. Does anybody from the public want to come up? Gail, do you want to talk about how you're getting your wife back and you're excited that they're back?
Have 3 minutes though?
Yeah. Okay, you guys are good. Thank you for showing up and supportive for this evening.
Thanks for
Yeah.
being here.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
I just want to say these are for you to your new lives, their gardening lives.
Yes.
And as
you.
a friend, I've appreciated you in here, but as a citizen, you're hard to replace.
Yes. Someone who knows, knows what I do. Thanks, Susan.
Okay, well, then Shelley's gonna hang out with us the rest of the evening, which we're so grateful for. Thank you all for coming. Let's see, we're done with that one. Okay, so I will look for a motion to approve the consent agenda less item C. Counselor Dem.
Thank you. I would move that we approve the consent agenda, omitting item C.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Counselor Dem, a second by Counselor Kaup. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Okay. We will move on to first item under actions and or presentations. This is, we have moved item C, 2025 Chamber Contract for Tourism Promotion Services. We've moved it to the very first item number 1 now. So I guess Counselor Godus pulled it off. I'll let you take it and just explain why you pulled it off. Go ahead.
Sure. I mean, I think we if we want to do a motion on it first and then comment, or do you want me to comment first and then we can do a motion?
Well,
Leave it
why
up to you.
don't you tell us why you pulled it off, if what your concern, if what you're looking for in
Yeah.
changing it.
I mean, I think, I've been asking council, our council, maybe not this council, but various iterations of councils have been asking in the past for a cost benefit analysis. Are we spending the correct amount? Are we spending, are we getting the right bang for our buck from this contract? And we haven't got that answer from the tourism board, the contractor, the chamber, or staff. And I think that, is there a diminishing return where at some point too much is just too much? Other communities have redirected their tourism spending to other community priorities for their residents. It's a conversation that's had in most mountain communities, and we don't ever have that conversation. We've talked about it, that we should have the conversation, but when it actually comes down to it, we just don't do it. Every year for, again, the last 8 years, we're told, that's a budget conversation. Let's wait till the budget. But then we get to the budget process and there's always a reason. This year, there wasn't even a reason. I think the reason was we were asking the chamber to help pass our street tax. So we didn't want to make them mad. So I think that's the reason this year. It'll be something else next year and the year after and the year after. And I think it's particularly tough because council voted 8 months ago to direct staff to actually get this information, to go to those communities, to see what the communities that have reduced their heads and beds, their marketing budget, what the results were. Has there been a drop off? Has there not been a drop off? What does that look like? And again, we were told we would get that information in time to make a decision through the budgeting process, and we have not. We've gone 12 years with the same contractor to not even ask if we should even go out for an RFP to see what else is out there, to see if things have changed in the landscape well over a decade since this was last critically examined, I think is a is a dereliction to our taxpayers and the community. We don't do that to any other contractor. We don't just put any other contractor in the city anywhere on autopilot where it's just whatever it brings in is what you get. And I think if you're a resident of Glenwood Springs, it should trouble you that $1.5 million is just given every year without thought or concern. Yeah, I mean, we have a tourism board that makes recommendations, but this tourism board is comprised of people that benefit from the dollars that are brought in from tourism. So I think that relying on the tourism board to help give us information on how to direct our spending when it completely benefits them and their businesses is problematic. So I think for those reasons, because again, this is a conversation I've had for 8 years. Shelley, you've observed them for all the 8 years. I'm going to vote against this tonight. I have no doubt it'll pass. But I think that at some point, the community needs to say $1.5 million of unexamined dollars that just goes out the door is something we need to examine. It does less to give me trust in the processes when we're asking for money for the community to do other projects. And it's going to probably prevent me from voting on the overall budget because after 8 years to have never even had this conversation over such a significant amount of money is really troubling to me. And so again, I think it's going to pass. I don't think that there's probably support for denying this. So with that, hell, I'll make the motion that we approve the budget for the 2025 tourism contract.
Wait, that you just said we're approving it?
I'll make the motion, yes.
To approve it?
Yeah.
Oh, great. Okay. Does someone want to second that? Counselor Zelinski.
I'll second it.
Okay. But before we move on and before we vote, I want to acknowledge that I think that effective governments and have lots of different voices at the table. And I do appreciate a lot of what you brought up this evening. And I think I want to alleviate any concerns after hearing your concerns addressed to the community that we are aware of everything you said. I think that the reality is that at one point in time, I don't know the exact date, the community approved a tourism promotion tax specifically for the promotion of this community as a resort and tourism destination, because it's kind of been our lifeblood since late 1800s. Now, there are definitely some impacts from that. We all contend with it and we recognize that. But I also think that from a fiscal responsible position, when you have taxpayers pass something that says, we're using this, this is what we're asking for, and the taxpayers say, okay, we'll give you those money, you use it for that reason. And if you choose not to use it for that reason, you go back to them and say, we don't want to promote Glenwood anymore, or we want to reallocate this money. But until we do that, I will continue to honor that there is a process in place that we have used as a contractor, the Chamber of Commerce, and they use a contractor within that. They use professionals who are also locals, who belong to this community. They promote the businesses, the amenities. They love Glenwood probably as much as we love Glenwood, and they have historically done that. I'm a little hesitant to go out and find somebody from Denver or Salt Lake or New York who says, yeah, I can promote your small town. And so we are in the process of shifting and adjusting that board so that the board has more of more autonomy, and they give us stronger recommendations based on their voice. We're making adjustments and we continually do that. But for the time being, the way that we're structuring it is a way that I feel honors the people of Glenwood and the tax dollars that we collect. And I'm going to be supporting your motion. So,
Can I respond to that? After everybody else goes.
Yeah, Councilor Day.
Thank you. I'm actually more interested, and I do remember that vote. I'm more interested why we weren't able to secure a firm that could help us with the analysis.
We did take it out to bid, Counselor, and we had a number of bids back. The only bids we got were from people that were in the tourism promotion business, even though that's not necessarily who we sent that to. So knowing that voice wouldn't necessarily have credibility because they've got a dog in the fight, we decided not to hire anybody at that time.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you.
Councilor Zelinski.
So yeah, I just wanted to reiterate and thank you so much for your comments, because that said a lot of what I was hoping to say. the way that this has come across, I want to reassure the community that we are not taking Glenwood Springs residents' tax dollars to fund something that it only benefits a small segment of the population. That Tourism Management Board is comprised of people who have a vested interest in tourism in Glenwood because it's their lifeblood. It's also the largest part of our local economy. And so by virtue of that, it does contribute to the residents of the community. We've seen some things that we think can be improved, and we're actively working on that. As Mayor Wusso said, we're really working to engage that board and make sure that we are recognizing the changing landscape of tourism in general, making it more sustainable, making it less impactful, recognizing the stressors. Tourism is challenged on a lot of fronts. And so to undermine the institutional knowledge and the history that we have with this contractor at this time didn't feel prudent. Rather than fight with them, we thought it'd be best to engage with them and work with them, see how it goes and move forward. And so to represent this decision as less than thoughtful feels a little bit disingenuous to the people that have given a lot of time to this, including our staff and the board members. And so I just wanted to stress that this is not, you raised really good points. Those points were heard. They were taken into consideration and brought out to other conversations. And so you've had a very positive impact with your concerns, but it hasn't been done recklessly or hastily or without a lot of intent.
Thank you, Councilor Zelinski. Councilor Godus.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I don't mean to say that this council is being reckless. I think that every council we've had has brought up this conversation in a work session, and those work sessions are not covered. Members of the public are not there. It's not televised. And so I think this is possibly the first time it's ever actually been brought up in public, in a public meeting for the record. And so that's part of why I'm saying these comments. And I think, reforming the tourism board to have a stronger voice, we're not really reforming it. We're creating some guardrails around roles and responsibilities. But at the end of the day, there's not one person on the tourism board that doesn't benefit directly from more and more money being spent to promote the community and the tourism that they serve on. It's like asking a barber if they need a haircut. Yeah, of course you need a haircut. I think so I think that fundamentally is great that board exists so they can give feedback to the contractor, but to give us feedback on how and where we spend the money. And I don't disagree with you, Mayor Wusso, that the tax was passed to promote the tourism, but I do disagree that we can't reallocate those money for tourism impacts as we have. We've done it numerous times. We've done it for downtown maintenance. We spend $200,000-$300,000 to give it to community nonprofits. We give it money for music in the park for our local community. We reallocate that money. We reallocate the reserves to things that are community minded and oriented. So we do that all the time with hundreds of thousands of dollars every year as part of what we do without going back out to a vote. So whether we spend $350,000 on things like cleaning and downtown maintenance and parks upkeep and nonprofit, or we spend $600,000 for more foot patrols and other things that are impacts of a tourism community, I think is something we should have a conversation about, because it doesn't fly in the face of a vote that was passed 20 years ago saying that tourism and its impacts, because I think those are all impacts. So like I said, I think it's something that seems like this council supports with this contractor. I don't think a contractor should have their feelings hurt simply by us saying we're going out to do a competitive process. If that's the case, then maybe they need to sharpen their pencils to make sure that we're getting the best deal for the community and the taxpayers. I'm not saying that we are saying that we don't want the best deal, but unless we go through a competitive bid process, we are not ensured that we are getting the best deal, because that's how bids work and that's how contractors work when we're the people in charge of the purse strings. That's all. Thank you. I appreciate it.
We certainly heard both sides, and I appreciate everyone speaking up. I do think that big picture, all the residents of the community certainly do benefit in some way, shape, or form from the promotion of tourism because we have opportunities here. I know my kids have had lots of hours in pools because of our community and lots of hours enjoying the amenities of our community that we're fortunate to live in. So with that, I'm going to, what's that? Oh, public comment. Is anybody here that would like to comment on this item? Thank you. Okay, we'll close public comment, bring it back for a vote. Thank you.
Yes, Counselor Zelinski. Yes, Mayor Wusso. No, Counselor Godis. Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Dame. Yes, Counselor Weimer. Yes, Counselor Kaup. It passes 5-1.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Moving on to the first item after this one, which is the Comprehensive Safety Action Plan update.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council, Lee Barger, transportation engineer, here to give you an update. And really, I'm here to present our consultant from Consor, who's going to really give the update tonight, Jenny Godwin. This is for the Comprehensive Safety Action Plan. It's funded through a FHWA grant, a $480,000 grant we got last year. And it's part of the Safe Streets for All program. Now, the goal of this study really is to place us in line with a bunch of projects that we could then go for more grant funding for. So basically, got to get the plans to get the grant. So that's where we're at. Let's see, Jenny's on here. I see her there.
Yes,
and so I'll just,
thank you, Lee.
We can hear you.
Okay, perfect. And I presume my slide deck's showing there somewhere as well. Great. Okay, I'll hop in. Thank you so much for having us here tonight. As Lee mentioned, I'm Jenny Godwin. I'm the project manager and a transportation planner with Consor Engineers based in Denver. We're also working closely with Alta Design on this project as well to support the city in developing their comprehensive safety action plan. So tonight is our first time speaking with you. We'll return a couple times throughout the project timeline to hear your feedback, to share what we're hearing from the community, and just make sure we're bringing you along the full process with us. So just to start with an overview briefly, and I'm sorry, I don't see which slide we're on, so I'm presuming we're still on the agenda, so I'm just going to start on that one. We'll start with an overview.
Can you hold on one second?
Yes.
We can't see your slides.
Oh, I'm sorry. I should not have presumed they were showing on that end. Let me share
you're
from my
totally
screen.
fine. Yeah.
Thank you so much for catching that. Let me pop over, make sure I have the permissions for that. Yep, it looks like I do. Great. Let me just turn on my present mode. Okay. Perfect. All right. How is that looking?
Much better.
That's great. So
Great.
yeah. Can you see those? Do you know which slide you're on?
Yes, I see the main slide and I'm
Okay,
moving to the
awesome.
agenda next.
Okay, good.
Perfect. Okay, thanks
We're
so much
all
for your
on track.
patience.
Okay.
Great. Okay, perfect. So yeah, we'll just provide a brief project overview, talk a little bit about the components of a CZAP, walk you through the timeline, talk about phase 1 project outreach, which we've just launched recently. And then if there's any questions at the end, of course, are welcome to ask us those.
Perfect.
Great. So first of all, Lee mentioned this project's funded by USDOT's Safe Streets and Roads for All program. And Glenwood Springs is one of many communities across the state and across the country that are prioritizing, increasing their safety outcomes across the city. And this really is a very collaborative effort. We know safety, mobility, it impacts everyone, how we travel around where we live and work and play. And so we have a project management team that's meeting bi-weekly. And there's representatives, of course, from Glenwood Springs, also from CDOT, from RAFTA, and from the Roaring Fork Public School District. And we really are all working around that common goal of, making the transportation network throughout the city safer and more efficient for everyone, no matter what mode they're traveling by. So the CZAP itself, it's really a very strategic approach to improve transportation safety within a specific area. So in this case, the city of Glenwood Springs as a whole. And it involves analyzing data on accidents and safety concerns. So we're in the middle of the crash data cleaning process right now. We're looking at CDOT crash data and also receive some crash data from RAFTA as well. And then community feedback, of course, is such an important component as well. So we'll talk about that in a minute, but we have a feedback map live where folks can basically drop a pin on a location of concern, upload a photo, provide us some more information about why they feel unsafe in that particular area. So all of those data pieces will be feeding in and helping us identify those problem areas. And so from there, the CZAP will result in a series of recommendations for project improvements, operational changes, and public awareness campaigns. So everything from infrastructure improvements, like signal operation improvements, education, policies, and other enhancements that will all work towards advancing those safety outcomes across the city. And as Lee mentioned, the goal really is to tee the city up to seek additional funding, whether that's internal or through Safe Streets and Roads for All or other grant funding programs, and have that suite of projects and actionable next steps that will really make a difference in terms of reducing crashes across the city. So an important component of that is really analyzing safety of all modes. So whether people are driving, biking, walking, taking transit, and ultimately will lead to developing a high injury network where really those are those kind of biggest bang for the buck areas where tackling safety improvements there will really make a very big difference in reducing crashes across the city. So in terms of the project timeline, there's a lot to digest here, but I'll just walk through some of the major highlights in terms of where we are and where we're going. So we're, of course, at that star right there in early October. And we're in the midst of the crash data analysis process, as I mentioned, and also in that phase 1 stakeholder outreach window. We are hosting pop-up events very soon. Actually, we're planning to in person on October 12th, so Saturday after next. I believe it was mentioned earlier, we'll be tabling at the Noche Latina event and also at City Market. So we'll have basically a big map there where folks can replicate the online version of the safety map and add pins and feedback and let us know where their concerns are and really just learn more about the project and how to be engaged. And then we'll be returning to council during the phase 2 outreach window. So probably around the February, March window. We'll also be returning to Transportation Commission as well, providing an update there. And then again in April as we're working through the draft plan. And of course, at the very end of everything in early May, we're imagining at this point we'll be returning, presenting the full comprehensive safety action plan for council's review and ultimate adoption. So just to briefly mention the phase 1 outreach, I think it was just today, the press release went out for this project, or if not, it will go out tomorrow. And if you go to the main City of Glenwood Springs webpage, you'll see one of those kind of nice banner images on the front there that links directly to this dedicated project webpage that provides a really great overview for folks to understand what the project is, what a CZAP is, how they can plug in and stay involved, what the timeline is. And the important piece now, of course, is the survey effort. So there's both a mapping, the safety map where you can add a pin, and then also a survey that walks folks through a series of questions with a bit of a deeper dive as well for folks who are parents or caregivers of children who attend schools in the area to understand what their concerns are from kind of a safe routes to school perspective in terms of getting kids to school safely, kids being able to use active modes perhaps to get to school or not, and kind of what the concerns and problem areas are there. So we've been working closely with Glenwood Springs Public Information Office to understand the best ways to promote this effort, and of course with a bilingual focus as well, and are excited to start receiving feedback. I just checked before the meeting, we have 19 pins so far, so folks are diving in and adding some feedback on the map, which is great to see. And we really appreciate council support, taking these surveys yourself, sharing them with your constituents. There'll be social media posts going out over the next few weeks as well from Glenwood Springs main channels, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, all of those. So you're welcome to repost those or add your own kind of comments on those as well. So that's what I have today. And we'd be happy to take any questions or anything that you have on your minds. Thanks for the time to let us present.
I'm excited about this. I think it's great. I think that one of the ways that we can help you be more successful though is we have to help spread the word.
Yeah.
Yeah. So can I
Absolutely.
get some just like general commitment up here that we spread the word as much as possible?
I've already posted.
Oh, good. She's already posted it. That's awesome.
Perfect. A+.
Lee, did you want to add anything?
No, great job, Jenny. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for
Thank you.
explaining all that and getting us started on this.
Mhm.
We're looking forward to the outreach
Yeah.
process that's coming up and hoping to get a lot of good info out of that.
Is it possible that we can get this to the schools?
Yes.
Okay.
You want to take that, Jenny?
I'm happy to, yes. And thank you for saying that. I should have mentioned, it was actually about a month ago, we did a school focus group, which worked really well virtually, where we were able to meet with representatives from all of the major public schools, everything from, elementary through high school, as well as some of the private schools as well. I just kind of met and talked one-on-one with leadership from those schools, got some really great initial feedback, and that did feed into the questions that we developed for the survey. And we will be circling back with them this week and sending kind of a full suite of all these materials where they can distribute the survey and those other elements out through their channels. So
That's great.
yeah,
And
great question.
What about like the hospitals and other major employers?
Yeah, good question too. I didn't call this out in the timeline, but we will be having a stakeholder committee meeting. We'll be meeting with them 3 times throughout the project timeline. So we've just started to outline, it'll be November, probably the first time we meet with them, but we'll be identifying, who from the business community, we did have like hospitals or medical facilities as a group there, Chamber of Commerce. Yeah, kind of outlining all of the groups throughout the city that would want to be invested in providing feedback.
Okay, awesome. Anybody else? Anybody up here have any questions or comments? Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Jenny. We appreciate your team. I actually think that Chloe is on our transportation commission and she's also part of this. So she's both
Yeah.
a commission member as well as a representative helping us with this. And so a little shout out to Chloe. Thank you.
Yes, definitely both hats.
Yeah, totally. Okay, thank you.
Great. Thanks so much. Have a good night.
Good night.
Oh, you know what? Hold on. Any
Yeah.
public comment? Any public comment before I close the agenda completely on this item? Anybody online for this specific item? Let's see here. If we have anybody online. No, okay, great. We'll close that item then. Moving on to Southbridge update.
All right, and I won't move.
Yeah.
I'm here. Again, Lee Barger. Ryan is attending his daughter's 10th birthday.
Yes.
So
Good for him.
that's what he should be doing.
Exactly.
So Southbridge, we got the NTP, the notice to proceed from them finally. I think you heard in the last meeting. So we had our first kickoff meeting today. It was a real meeting of all the minds in CDOT, FHWA, Jacobs, and the 3 of us from the engineering department went down to Junction this morning. And well, we had a few questions and ended up getting a few more meetings out of it, right? So these are, questions we had to dive into a little deeper with the right proper group around us, but we got all that out there today. And we really felt like this was a lot like about a year ago. It was actually 365 days ago that we did the VE process with our consultant here that really started this whole next step. We talked about a lot of traffic and noise issues that are going to be needed to solve. And that's what Jacobs was kind of lining out their schedule of how they're going to get the reevaluation done. We discussed some access issues at County Road 154. So this is something that we'll dive into deeper a little bit with them. But again, this is trying to foresee a cost savings on the project and not having to build a $4 to $5 million wall up along Highway 82 to retain a driveway for 3 different units. So we're really trying to alleviate that and, reduce that. But at the same time, we have to come up with a really good plan and present it to them. And that's what this next meeting will be about. It's just showing them all of the specifics and the benefits and the, constraints to it. And then another meeting will also be on right of way. Now, this is an issue where we've already got a set of right of way plans that are approved. We've made some modifications to the project. And so they need to be sure that we don't have to ask for any more right of way. We've gotten the agreement that it's easy to take stuff off of a job. It's very difficult to get more land added to it at this point. So that's, again, that was from the beginning, 365 days ago, was to not change the design such that we would have to go through this right-of-way process. So that's another meeting that we're going to have a sit down and just lay out all the plans and go over them piece by piece, property by property, and show them exactly what is being reduced, because that's really what's happening is some of the impacts are reduced, and that's a good thing. That's what we try to promote. So really, that's a summary of what's happened in the last 2 weeks. All happened today, and we're looking forward to getting a meeting next week on the traffic portion, and then move into that right-of-way portion probably the next week. So keeping it moving along as fast as we can. We had a big discussion on tolling today, which could add a wrench to it. We might want to talk about that a little more internally before we go that route. But it was good to get it on the table and hear their thoughts.
It's
So,
the time for that.
and it is acceptable by the FHWA. That was an okay add-on if it does need to happen, if we decide we want to do that. So there we have it. Any questions? I know we have this open for let you conduct the meeting.
Any questions from council? Any questions from the community? Do we have anybody here wanting to make public comment? Anyone online wanting to make public comment? Please raise your hand if you would like to make public comment. Okay, Counselor Weimer.
Lee, could you remind us where we are with the value engineering effort?
Well, so that's basically concluded. I guess the last piece of that is this County Road 154 part.
So are we at a number now that we feel like we've valued out of the project that we're comfortable with sort of?
Yeah,
Tacky.
yeah, I mean, I don't have the figure on me. Ryan's a little better with those.
Okay.
But yes, we have, this is our last step of that value process.
Okay.
And so it's really the first step of that is to get them to agree to it.
Yep.
And pull it off. And that's really, all right, we just have to put up that case to them next week sometime.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Sure.
Counselor Gotis.
So if you can, if you cannot, that's fine as well. Just say, I would rather not get into that. But what is the process of not spending $5 million for, I mean, is there a possibility of a access road? How do we not build a $5 million retaining wall for 3 residents?
Well, they currently have an access.
Right.
And the city went through, and I don't know if the county adopted their portion of the access control plan. Do you know that, Carl?
Currently, the access control plan for that intersection would be to leave it the way it is.
Yeah.
So this is a fairly substantial change to it. And so really the case we're making is that under the circumstances, it's not the potential safety upgrades that they think they're getting out of it are not consistent with their own access control plan. So it's just a matter of arguing our way through that, frankly.
So it's not that this driveway poses, because of the amount of traffic that 3 residences provide, that this is not such a safety issue for the general public, that it's worth, it might be worth a couple $100,000, but it's not worth a couple million.
It primarily is going to enhance the flow of traffic rather than safety at that intersection. It cuts down the number of movements, which is what they're looking for at that light.
And so our value question is that worth $4 or $5 million for that
right.
minor amount of safety?
That's right.
Okay,
And
thank you.
Recent traffic counts showed no vehicles come out of there in the morning and the afternoon peak hours. They avoid it. They're retired. I don't know. I think there's a teacher up there. So, yeah, that's the goal.
Okay.
And also, I mean, our fire department does not like this excessively long cul-de-sac that is being designed, you know, from on that frontage road that goes by Go Rentals and then on up there. It's just going to make it a lot longer than what they are comfortable with. It's going to be a very narrow access and steep down one side all the way to the highway.
Real quick, I'll say, because it's kind of Shelley night. Shelley, this has been one of your biggest priorities that you have had probably since your first term. I mean, a lot of the momentum and the tenacity when council has wavered, when funding's not always been there or readily apparent, has been because you have just pounded your fists on the table. This bridge is happening in large part because of your advocacy. So again, thank you.
Yeah, actually, when I got the email that we got the $49.8 million grant, we were in a work session and I turned to you. And I told you first. And I whispered it. And then I was like, oh, maybe I should announce this to everyone. But thank you. Thank you for your tenacity on getting that bridge built. Counselor Carroll.
Well, I was just gonna say, it's been a long time. But it's this bridge and this piece of our transportation system, as Lee knows, is so important to our whole redundancy and just transportation system of the city. You know, adding another crossing over the Roaring Fork is so important for South Glenwood Springs access and safety, fire evacuation. So I'm so happy to see it move forward, and I'm so grateful to all the staff and the councils and the staff that have come forward, that have kept it moving forward and culminated in a almost $50 million HW grant. And we've had the earmark since, Carl, do you know? 2005? Was it 5?
I mean, we started, I remember Don Vanderhook arguing to Scott McGinnis during the fire that we needed an earmark and we needed a bridge.
That we needed.
That was 2002, right?
That was 2002. So that's really when it started, was
2024, maybe 2025, it's gonna be so close to reality. So thank you, and staff and everybody keep pushing and get it done.
Goal is to take it out to bid by a year from now.
Fantastic. Yay.
What
Yeah.
do you think the construction?
And
time is?
smart decisions being made on it, I think. Sorry, just
no,
to
you're
cut
fine.
costs and, you know, and make it a bridge that serves Glenwood. It's not a bypass, so appreciate that.
What do you think that the duration of the construction period will be?
2 to 3 years.
Okay, thank you. Just for the public. So,
And that is reduced from what we originally had planned of, 3 to 4 with the other style of
Yeah.
bridge and the tunnel.
great. Okay, thank you so much, Lee. We appreciate it. And we'll let you sit down this time.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 15, this is ordinance 2024-19, an ordinance of the city of Glenwood Springs, amending section 040-010-040 of the Glenwood Springs Municipal Code to provide for the implementation of proposed taxing measure referred to the city electors' second reading.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. What you have in front of you, as you read out, is a second reading of this ordinance. At the last meeting, Mr. Smith asked that some changes be made to section 4A of the ordinance. I tried to address that and maintain, I think, as much flexibility as flexibility in the sense of making sure that we're talking about street, alley, curb, gutter, and sidewalk conditions, and set enhanced safety for all users. Earlier today, I know Mr. Smith sent out, or Glenwood Bicycle Advocates sent out an email asking that their original language just be put back in. The only struggle I have with that is that I kind of feel like it might be a little limiting, and I feel like it kind of directs us at only safety projects potentially. And I just, language in these ordinances, as we know, we just had a discussion about it on the item pulled off of the consent agenda. they really kind of matter. And so keeping it as simple and as clean as possible would be my recommendation. I'm comfortable with the language that I proposed adding and that it talks about, and, you know, and safety for all users instead of making that the only focus. But it's up to council, however you want to have that worded. I leave it to your discretion.
Counselor Kelp.
Carl, could you just clarify? I'm looking at the 4A, and you have fund the repair, reconstruction, maintenance of existing streets, alleys, curb gutters, sidewalks, and then it's in brackets.
The bracketed language would be my attempt to address some of what Mr. Smith had raised about
Right.
talking about the 2 section.
So would that add to that, or does it replace part of that? That
It
comes
adds
before
to it. It's an add.
It's just an
It's
add.
just an
Okay.
add to that.
Okay.
I don't, you know, I mean, as we design street projects, we would do all of those things, including
Right.
safety for all users.
But this
So
gives a purpose.
it kind of inserts a purpose. So there again, I don't know that it's necessary. Like I said, I'm a little uncomfortable with the language proposed by Steve Smith, but there again, it's up to you guys.
And yeah, and I feel like you did a good job covering that. So thanks. Thanks for clarifying.
And then I just want, you know, once again, sometimes I think we ask questions as more of a point of clarification, but to confirm that, you know, we just talked about Southbridge and none of this money could be used to build that.
No,
Based on the language.
we are, you know, Southbridge will occur outside the corporate boundaries.
Mhm.
And certainly to have that in the corporate boundaries would require an election underneath the charter changes, the recent initiative. So this would definitely not, and it's not an existing street, so
Exactly.
it wouldn't
Okay.
qualify both
Okay.
outside the corporate limits,
Yep.
not an existing street today. So I think both of those things limit the use of these funds. I mean, obviously, we have a tax that was passed specifically for major projects
Sure. Mm-hmm.
like Southbridge, and that's the A&I tax, which was not designed to do street maintenance, repair, or reconstruction. It was designed to hit those really big projects and acquisitions,
Mhm.
you know, that we have out there. So 2 very different purposes for those 2 tax funds.
Thank you. I appreciate that clarity. Counselor Gotis.
Yeah, to that point, how far does our corporate boundaries extend on Airport Road?
On that, actually, I'd probably have to have Matt, because that Airport Road's weird. Some's in, some's out, some is out. So I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. I know that it's, you know, with the existing pavement to roughly the Cardiff Glen neighborhood.
Yeah, you can look at like a city map. I don't know if that's going to give you enough, but.
Oh, no, I mean, but in theory, we could use some of this tax because it is an existing street up to our corporate boundary.
Yeah, I mean, I think the intent of the Southbridge project was always to be a standalone,
Yeah.
for sure. I mean, if we're not doing that project, absolutely. I think you could use, you know, some of that to, you know, fix portions of Airport Road. But there again, like I said, it's weird out there because the roads are both in and out of the county. It's like.
Yeah, I
there's still
never
a
know.
section there's still a section of county road just down from your house. It goes
Mhm.
down to the.
Old
towards the
Cardiff Bridge.
Cardiff Bridge.
Yeah.
So I can't tell you what's in and what's out.
Yeah, I'm just curious. Thanks.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Any other questions on this? And if not, our options are someone could make a motion to amend it. We could hold on. I know, I'm just giving us kind of some direction before we move on. We could make a motion just to the second, you know, the second reading, or go a different direction. Counselor Kelp.
I'll go ahead and
Oh,
make,
we have to do public comment first.
before we make a motion?
Mhm.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Do we have, sorry,
That's all right.
do we have any public that would like to make a comment this evening? 3 minutes for this agenda item? Anybody online? It's a quiet night tonight. Okay, I'll bring it back to Counselor Cap.
Okay, I would make a motion, and I'm happy to do this because I actually voted against this on first reading, just because I was hoping to see this revised language
great.
in there. I think it clarifies purpose and, so I would make a motion that we accept ordinance 2024-19 based on the proposed revised addition, the add-on language that was inserted by the city attorney for clarification, and otherwise it would be, you know, accepted as proposed.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any additional comments? Okay, we'll call the question.
It's unanimous. It passes.
Thank you, Carl. We appreciate it. And thank you, Steve Smith, for keeping us on our toes and making us think really big on how this is appropriated and what's good for community. We appreciate you. Item number 16, employer-based rental assistance program recommendations for fundings. As a reminder, we did have a work session on this earlier today. So we have been already discussing this concept and have a pretty good idea of what it's all about.
Good evening, Council. My name is Kevin Reyes. I am the Housing Development Manager with the Community Development Department. I'm just going to pull up my presentation. All right. Perfect. Yeah, so as you mentioned, we had a work session on this concept earlier today. Just for everyone's sort of edification and for the benefit of the public, I'm going to just run through how this program is sort of conceptualized, just some basic, guidelines of how we're planning to roll this out. And then with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. So the Workforce Housing Fund Advisory Board, WHFAB, I think it's worth starting with this note that in February of this year, Council created an implementation plan for the WHFAB. And so the idea behind this employee fund comes directly from that plan that Council adopted. And specifically in that plan, there's some goals and strategies. And goal number 2 is worth just pointing out here. It says, the goal here is to increase affordable housing by 3% based on the City of Glenwood Springs 2023 strategic housing plans, projected long-range need for dwelling units through property preservation and affordable housing creation strategies by December 2027. Beneath that goal, there's a goal 2B, which speaks more directly to this concept, which is to design and implement rental assistance pilot programs inclusive of immediate and long-term rental subsidy options for households at 30 to 150% of area median income and any additional criteria established by the working groups by December 2024. So that's how we got here. So just wanted to make sure that we all understand the context. So here's the way this employer-based rental assistance program is sort of conceptualized. So the number 30%, I think is worth pointing out. This is a pivotal number, and it's the definition of the cost burden household is if someone or a family spends more than 30% of their gross income on housing costs. So 30% is really an important number, and that's how we sort of design the programs around this. So here we have a family that spends less than 30% of their income on rent. And there's a family that spends more than 30%. So we can see how that plays out, right? So first family has an annual income of $80,000, which puts them in roughly at 86th percentile of area median income for this area. If they pay $1,500 a month in rent, they pay $18,000 annually. And that's 22.5% of their annual income is going towards housing. So by CHAFA's definition, this family is not cost burdened. And again, cost burden is when you're at risk of being displaced. I should point that out. The other family, same amount of annual income, but they pay $2,500 a month in rent, $1,000 more than the first family. So they're paying $30,000 annually on rent. They're spending 37.5% of their median income of their annual income on rent. So this would be a cost burden family, even though they have the same income. So I just want to make sure that we all understand what we're talking about here. And so this family on the right is the family that we're really targeting in this employee-based housing support system.
Sorry, we're distracted.
Oh, that's all right. Yeah,
There was a loud noise.
Yeah, what that
yeah,
was. Can I ask a quick question, Kevin?
yeah.
What, do you have an idea of what the kind of average rent is for a 2-bedroom apartment in Glenwood right now?
I don't have the
We know.
average number, but I can tell you, actually in my next slide here, how many families in Glenwood are roughly cost burdened, which, families that are spending more than 30% of their income on housing. The statistic that you're asking about is probably obtainable. We haven't done that analysis, but I
Okay.
can certainly look into it.
Like rents.
Sure.
Oh, Hannah's.
Yeah.
Or just kind of a.
Yeah, so some of this is anecdotal, but we used to go by $1,000 per bedroom, and we've seen that tick up. I'm not gonna say this is the average, but we're looking at 2,200 to 2,500 is pretty standard for a 2-bedroom rent.
Okay, that's kind of.
Obviously much higher when you get to 3.
Okay, yeah. So that scenario you showed on the previous slide was right in there.
I think 2,800 is
you.
probably a pretty fair assessment.
Okay.
2,800, 26 to 3 to give a range with landing at about 2,800.
Okay.
Perfect. There you go. So on that same topic, just referring back to the Glenwood Springs Strategic Housing Plan Needs Assessment, which was done just last year, so it's still quite up to date. There was an analysis done on cost burdened households in Glenwood Springs, and according to that, 44% of renters in the city are cost burdened. 24% of homeowners are cost burdened. So, good chunk of both demographics here, but the renters are really the ones that kind of stand out. And that's kind of the focus of this program. So that same study actually took this analysis of like how many people are cost burdened, and they took it a step farther and basically looked at how does this affecting job vacancies in town. So this is kind of an interesting statistic, but you can see that on the right, the area median income, the jobs that pay based on the area median income are more vacant or unfilled for the lower AMI thresholds here. So those are kind of your service jobs, the restaurant jobs, things like that. I think it was for the AMI below 80%. Yeah, for AMI below 80%, it was over 80% of the jobs are unfilled according to this chart, which is kind of an interesting, staggering statistic here. I'm sorry, 80% of the unfilled jobs are the ones that are below 80%, not 80% of all the jobs. So as you can see, there's a direct correlation between housing folks and filling jobs. So the WHFAB came up with this idea of using a portion of the 2C funds that we collect to supplement a portion of employees' rent based on household AMI. So here we have a family that, again, right now they're spending more than 30% of their income on housing. Same scenario, $80,000. They're spending $2,500 a month. Again, 37.5% of their income is going towards housing. So they are, by definition, cost burdened because they're above that 30% threshold. So our goal here is to have that family spend no more than 30% of their annual income on rent. So 37.5 minus 7.5 gets them down to 30%. That 7.5% represents about $6,000 a year that would go towards this family to supplement their rent. That $6,000 goes divided by 12 months a year, is $500 a month. And that $500 a month is divided by 2 because we are going to be doing this in partnership with local employers. So the 2C funds would pay for half of it, and then the local employer would pay for the other half. So that's how these numbers are broken down. So again, for this particular scenario, $250 a month would go towards this family from the 2C fund, and then that family's employer would pay the other half. So some pros and cons of this concept, just high level. The pros are this is development neutral. We're not proposing any new development. This is existing housing stock that we're using. It's immediate support for local households. We don't have to wait for units to be built. It benefits employers, obviously, because they have a much higher retention rate of employees. And then the administrative obligations are shared with employers as well. A lot of the sort of, first finding the actual people who qualify, the employers would know that. And then they're the ones that are making sure that they, submit the application to us, and then we review it. So there's some sharing of the responsibilities there. The con that I think is worth mentioning is this does not address the fundamental causes of the housing shortage, which is we don't have enough housing. So those are some things to kind of think about for council this evening. So in summary, the WHFAB recommendation, which staff supports, is to allocate $50,000 of 2C funds to pilot the program for 6 months. That would be starting in 2025. And then following the pilot period, WHFAB recommends allocating up to $250,000 of 2C funds per year thereafter. And so I don't know if you can see this super well. It's also in the packet. But I just wanted to show how that would be in the 2C budget. So the area that's highlighted in yellow, you can see the initial $50,000 towards the program is allocated in 2025. And then because that's covering the first 6 months, then the latter 6 months of the year would be $100,000 to get us to the end of 2025, and then full $250,000 would start in 2026. And I know during the work session, we had discussion about extending the pilot program for an additional 6 months, so have it be a full year, which again, that's at council's discretion. But with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, and thank you.
Do we have any questions on this? Okay, Councilor.
Thank you. Just really quick. So if this is new and we're gonna bring this to the public and the employers and all that kind of stuff, if the employers, if you can't get anybody to bite, would you say this is dead, or should we just rethink it?
Well, if no one is interested in this program, which I think would personally, I would be surprised. But if there's no interest, I think we would re-examine the approach. I think we'd have to look at the facts and say maybe we didn't market it correctly. Maybe there really isn't a demand for it and we should use the money for something else. I think that's part of the pilot program. But I would personally be surprised if folks were not interested in this.
Optimistic, I like that. And the second part is, are we gonna see the final rules and regulations of this program before this starts?
I like that.
So that's a good question. The pilot program is a time for staff to sort of work out the kinks, kind of establish some additional guidelines and regulations. If council is interested, we can come back at the end of that period and with some recommendations and refine the program. Or if council is interested this evening, if at council's pleasure, give staff the discretion to implement the program on a full-time basis after the pilot program has ended. So that's a decision that's up to council this evening. The only thing I'd say, the reason we're asking for sort of like a guarantee that this will be funded after the pilot program is because realistically, folks are going to be making some personal life decisions, signing contracts and leases that are probably going to be longer than 6 months or probably up to a year. And if they are making those decisions based on a guarantee of this funding, we would want to avoid a situation where this funding ends after 6 months and they're sort of on their own to cover that. So that's our thinking this evening, was to try to get the thing funded for the foreseeable future so that people have a guarantee of where they can sign a lease and make those kinds of decisions.
Would you think that we get into the pilot, we get rolling, and after 6 months, we see that it might need a little bit of an adjustment? Would you say that it would be difficult to make that adjustment because you already have some people contractually obligated, or would you say that it could be easily adjusted and move forward after 6 months, or even maybe wait till that year is over and then do adjustments, amendments, whatever we need to do?
Yeah, I think the adjustments that I can foresee are more administrative.
Mhm.
Things like, how do we conduct audits? How do we, approach an employer after, we have this somewhat laid out, but like if we're funding an employee who then quits or gets let go from their job, how do we, they're no longer going to be funded under this program. So we have to kind of work out those things. And I'm not sure how much in the weeds council wants to get on that. I think a lot of those staff feels confident to kind of make those decisions. But if council is interested in making having input on that, we can certainly come back after the pilot program and discuss that.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because that's my weeds. And I want to make sure, or is that in the program that this is really strictly for people that work in Glenwood Springs?
Yeah, so that's sort of
Corporate boundaries, not 81601. Corporate boundaries. Glenwood
2C
Springs.
has boundaries. So we can just say that within
Okay,
the boundaries. of
within
2C.
2Cs, okay, I'm
Yeah.
good with that. But
Okay.
that's what this program is intended to help.
The program is
Wait.
intended to help people, yeah, as you said, with in compliance with 2C. But again, a decision for council to make this evening, depending on how prescriptive you want to be, is, for instance, you could say we want this to benefit employers and employees who live and work in Glenwood Springs. Or you can say we want this to benefit employers who are based in Glenwood Springs, but the employee can live elsewhere. Those are the kinds of decisions
Okay.
that you have discretion over. The way we've conceptualized it here is that the employee would be living within the zip code, but the employer would be within the city limits.
I think that's
again,
Okay.
key.
That's based on
Probably.
that's based on whether or not they have a business permit in the city. So if it was a construction company that does work up in Aspen, but they are headquartered here, we would not necessarily exclude them from the program as long as they have a business license in Glenwood Springs and they do some business here. We wouldn't be, especially because we logistically, I don't know how we would be able to track that and really sort of audit some employers. So we're trying to kind of keep it nice and simple in that regard. But I think the thing that council for this purposes of this evening, I guess I would ask council to make a decision about where they want employees to live, whether or not it's in city limits, in the zip code, or beyond that. And the second thing I would ask for council to make a decision on is just lost my train of thought. The number of employees
There you go.
that an employer can have in order to qualify for this.
And that was my
Those are
next
things we
question.
Talked about in the work session. I think those would give us the high level direction that we need to implement and execute this program. And I personally think that we would be able to move it forward after the pilot program without additional input from council. But again, that's at your discretion. If you want to see us back here in 6 months or a year, we can certainly do that.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Counselor Godus.
So the pilot program is for 6 months, correct?
As of right now, we have it conceptualized for 6 months.
Okay. And so then I'm reading the action requested, and one of the the requested action is to allocate up to 250,000 per year following the initial pilot period. Just that wording to me feels like this is in perpetuity. I get where we certainly need to give. I completely agree with Hannah about all of this. I just want to make that known
Completely.
publicly. But if we, I did the buts, I'm sorry. We need to give people enough when they sign a year lease that they have some leeway, maybe even a year and a half, maybe 2 years. But the way this reads is it's just in perpetuity. So I guess maybe would you be okay with a motion that included funding it for 1 year, 18 months? What would be the idea thing? Because we want to kind of do a check-in after the pilot period. But yeah, I don't feel comfortable saying, hey, just forever, $250,000. So what would be another good check-in point after that? Would it be 18 months? Would it be 2 years? So that we can give the employer and the employee enough runway so that it's successful, but yet there's also a check-in to say, oh, is 15% enough? Is it too much? How is it done? What would your recommendation be, Kevin?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think there's a couple ways to approach it. The first is if you were to go with staff's proposal and do it in the perpetuity, we can still establish a timeline of checking in with council regardless. And then, make decisions whether or not we want to stop funding it. There's another way to do it. If we're trying to provide a sort of guarantee to tenants who are benefiting from the program, is to create, we don't have an ordinance, but to articulate, the concept of crafting it in such a way where we allocate a certain amount of money every year. And then we can also say, in addition to that, let's say, for example, the money, we have it funded through the end of 2026. So it's basically 2 years. We can say it's funded through the end of that year and until the end of people's lease who are currently in the program. So that way we can continue to make people whole until their lease ends, something along those lines. And, we can work out details and make sure people don't have leases that are longer than 1 year and stuff like that.
As you're talking about this, I realize this is going to be subject to annual appropriations anyway, so never mind. Yeah. Well, I mean, I just, it's good. I like the, prior to my previous comments, I like the ability every year to see how a program's going and have that check in. And certainly we'll be doing that through the budget process. So hopefully. Thanks.
And we can certainly, we can certainly have a formal check-in in addition to that, where we just check in on this item with council, and could just be an information item with a memo, and we can come up to the podium here and talk about it. If council wishes to have some more formal updates along the way, we're more than happy to do that as well.
Thanks.
When I read the staff report, I don't see anything. I mean, I see about the discussion of the 250K, but this evening I just see the approval of the pilot program. So you're just really asking for the 50K this evening. You're asking for both?
So yeah, just
Okay.
to clarify, we're asking for both. And
Okay,
again,
so I was,
we wanna try to-
as I read it, that there was some confusion. So
Yeah.
I do appreciate that. I'm gonna jump in and then I'm gonna let everybody else, because I hate always going last. I want the check-in too, and I would prefer a 6-month check-in. So I'm comfortable with giving, I think that when people sign a year-long lease, which a lot of these people are probably going to sign a lease with the anticipation that they have this funding. So I would like to see that the funding lasts. If it's a 6-month lease, great, we do it for the 6 months. If it's 12 months, I want them to have the confidence for it. For those at home, as a reminder, this is not city general fund. This is money specifically coming from the tax that was passed in late 2022 for housing. It was for affordable housing. So this is our fund. I've been getting feedback from community members sometimes that they feel like we just give money all away to, anybody who comes up and asks, but the reality is that this was approved by the taxpayers. So with that, I guess I only had one other question, or maybe just I do trust staff, but with that, I want to make sure that there's some checking, that people are, there's a lot of vetting of the people, but did I see that it was the 60 to 80 AMI that had the highest challenges in filling positions? Was it 60 to 80?
It was a little bit lower than that, and I can pull it up.
Okay, yeah, let's go back to that, because if I could make an ask that it be that AMI price point that we really try to dial in with the support of this program, that would be my preference, if that's doable.
Yeah, let me pull that up.
Is this slideshow available anywhere online?
I'm happy to put it online. It's not in the packet.
In our packet?
Yeah, I'm still sort of getting up to speed on everything, so
30 to
I'll
60.
get it online. I'm sorry.
Okay, so I would love to see an emphasis on that prioritized, but at the same time, I also recognize the challenges of even finding housing that both meet somebody even after this assistance, They can be in one of our really expensive rentals who is making 30 to 60% of AMI. There's just not very many of them out there. This is the $1,000 ADU crowd.
Yeah, and to that point, if I may, in the packet, I think it's exhibit 1 or 2, there's a spreadsheet in there that puts a cap on how much support an individual, a household
Yeah.
might receive. So
Yeah.
we're trying to get folks down to that 30%
Yeah.
number. But if they're in a place that is so expensive that we can't even get to that, then there's a cap so that we're not completely spending all this money on.
Thank you for acknowledging that. I appreciate that. So, Counselor Zelinski.
So my question was about the additional 100,000 after 6 months. I get that that's to, well, actually I don't get. So the pilot program is funded to the tune of 50,000. If we're doing 250 annually, I'm wondering why that number isn't 125,000, because that would be that'd be 6 months of 250. So I didn't know what was the anticipation. Is this just a ramping up or?
That was an arithmetic error.
Oh.
Me. 125.
Okay.
But yeah, that's a good point.
Okay, I just wanted, because I anticipate this being successful, and so I guess I would almost like, if that's truly the anticipation is that it would be that like next 6 months, then I would just like put that in there and then, rather than have to come back to us for more money. And then my other question was about that cap. If somebody is in a unit, like say they've chosen to live somewhere that is, even after supplementation, it's going to exceed the cap, would they still be able to get the maximum amount? And then they can do their own budgeting? So there would always be some sort of an assistance regardless of where they're at as far as their like cost burden status.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
So the cap is there just to sort of protect the overall
assets,
fund
yeah.
of that's available. But if someone qualifies and they reach the cap, then that's what they would get. Yeah, they're.
And that's based on the household income, not the individual's income? So like if they are in a 2-bedroom unit and there's 2 people living there, it's just that the individual's portion of, so say their rent is 3,200. Would you evaluate their income on 1,600 or would you, okay. Like if they had a roommate, not a spouse?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So those are the kinds of details that we are going to flesh out in the pilot.
Gotcha.
But I think the way I envision it is it would be based on household income. So if it's 2 adults, whether or not they're married or they're just roommates or partners or whatever, and they're both working and they're contributing towards the rent, I think we would probably look at it holistically as a whole household. But if it's 3-person household, like the example I showed, and
right,
one is a stay-at-home parent and one's a dependent child, we would consider it that way. I think that's how we would envision it. But again, that's something those are the in the weeds details that we're going to flesh out during the pilot program.
got it, thank you.
Yep.
Counselor Gotis.
I think this is going to be hugely in demand. What, if any, process do we have if we have 30 or 50 applicants for maybe 8 spots? Do we have a lottery process? Do we have a priority process?
Yeah, again, so these are all really good questions that I think during the pilot program, we're going to have to figure out. Depending on how much interest there is and how quickly we get applications, we might have to prioritize them based on how far away they are from that 30% threshold, maybe based on their AMI, could just be in the order we receive applications. There's a million ways to do it. And I think during this pilot program, we will, as staff, get some clarity on that topic, because it's something that I don't think we should necessarily take lightly. I think we should be thoughtful about how to prioritize folks. So I think that's a great question. I think we'll have some clarity on that when we do our check-in.
And are we doing comments right now as well, or still questions?
we're supposed to be doing questions, but we've been leaking in some comments. They've been leaking in. So why don't you maybe make a motion
Okay.
and then we can go ahead and make our official comments.
I'll make a motion that we accept the recommendations as lined out in the staff report to allocate a portion of 2C funds towards the piloting of the employer-based rental assistance program and to allocate up to $250,000 per year following the initial pilot program with the following condition: that no more than 15 full-time employees, businesses with no more than 15 full-time employees are considered for the pilot program. Full-time employees are defined as 32 hours a week or more on average per the report. And this is full-time employees, not full-time equivalents. So we can't take part-time employees and meld them in. And that's the upper limit I would like for this. It has to be a business located in Glenwood Springs, and the housing has to be located in 81601. I believe you asked for that. And my only prioritization would be, and if you want to make it a formal ask, I'd rather let staff kind of work on that as further prioritization. But the one prioritization I would give in the motion would be to prioritize businesses that demonstrate that they have employees that work in Glenwood Springs. And what I mean by that is the example you gave of some contractor that sends their employees up valley and all that. The reason is, so that's motion. The reason for that is I think we want to encourage for our traffic and our climate goals that employees live and work in the community, live in the same community that they work. And so I'm not going to say that that has to be the case, because I think then it adds a layer of burden onto staff. But if we can easily prioritize that or ascertain that if we have a lot of applications, I think that achieves our climate and traffic goals. So the motion is as it stands. Is there a second?
There's a second. I second that.
Okay, I will open it up to comment. Counselor Weimer.
So I do not support this as it's written, as it's been conceptualized. And so here's my thoughts on that. We're not ready. This isn't ready for pilot. There, through the work session that we had today, the discussion that we're having right now, lots of great questions and lots of potential around what those answers could be, but we don't have enough detail or structure yet to start the pilot. And I'm not a big fan of using any pilot to figure things out, right? You go into a pilot with a strong set of a strong structure, good assumptions. Pilots are used to validate assumptions. Pilots are used to refine, not create. And us, making the decision tonight to throw a bunch of money at a pilot that's just not ready yet. It's got potential, Kevin. It's got potential, Hannah. But we're not there yet. And I'm not comfortable giving the go-ahead for a pilot with a lot of money behind it, not enough structure, not enough answers to these good questions, let alone, an annual promise to re-up these things. So I would be comfortable instead to ask Kevin, to go back and put some more ink on the paper, right? And consider all of these questions that we talked about in the work session that we're talking about right now, and come back with a more structured, thoughtful, objective, that it has objectived pilot, so that we can then be very thoughtful about how do we fund it, right? What is it that we're trying to do? And then how do we fund it? So the motion that's been presented and seconded tonight, I will not be in support of.
Counselor Zelinski.
I'm torn. Counselor Weimer brings up good points, but I feel like you have to start somewhere, and I think that, you know, this might be one of those things that we have to learn by doing. I don't know that we can conceptualize solutions because it's new. And you even mentioned in the work session that you reached out to other communities that are, you know, claiming to do this, working on doing this, and we're all kind of in the same, like, figuring it out mode. So I think that there's a lot of knowledge that can be gained by doing. I think there's a lot of knowledge that can be gained by others doing and then sharing that and collaborating. And so I think that, it stands right now. I think that this has a lot of value to, our business community in particular. And so I think that I'm still in support. I actually thought of an additional question that I want to ask if I could. And I don't know if we already talked about it, sorry. Do you have to be a full-time employee to participate in this?
I think that's one of.
It has to be.
32 hours.
Got you. Okay, I thought you were just talking about like the business had to have so many full-time employees.
That's also too. Yeah.
And so I didn't know that it was both. Okay. I apologize for not listening well.
Counselor Gotis.
Mitchell, thank you. Really good comments. I think by the time we see things, this does not feel half-baked to me. Let me, and not that you said half-baked, I don't want to imply that you said that, but we have a 2-page staff report, we have a 4-page white paper, we have a detailed budget, and we have a 2-page implementation plan. I would bet that we've had 100 hours of staff time that have gone into this. The 2C committee or the housing committee, well, FAM, has been talking about this and discussing this in meetings for over a year to come up with a recommendation that staff has articulated in these 4 documents. I think that if they were asking for $250,000 a year in perpetuity and just coming out of the gate, I'd want to have a few more of the priorities. I'd want to know, are we doing a lottery? Are we doing it this? How are we prioritizing? But I think those are questions, and that is the reason for the pilot. So I think we're there personally. I think we're there enough to at least have the pilot. And the thing that does cause me some anxiety, and I think, you know, Mayor Wusso, I heard that a little bit, is a pilot's 6 months. And in theory, after 6 months, you go like, all right, we're only $50,000 into this. Let's pull the plug. Or wow, we have to change it dramatically. We just don't get that opportunity because we have people signing year leases. And in theory, we want to be able to give these people a 2-year runway commitment, right? Like that's the idea of that. If you do this, it's not just a 12-month sugar rush, and you know, it might be stepped down, but we got to figure this out. So I think we're going to need the pilot period to make the adjustments. And then we're also going to need another 1.5 years to figure out how this really plays out for the people. So I appreciate the comments because those are great comments, and I'm just a little more confident in it than you.
Counselor Coe.
Thanks. I agree. I appreciate the questions and the comments, Mitchell, that you brought up. And I'm wondering if we can kind of address those issues and still within the timeline, because, you know, it's first meeting in October. We have 2.5 months before the end of the year. And if the project is going to start in 2025, possibly our new housing manager, Kevin, could bring back answers to some of those details, because we did have the work session tonight and you asked a lot of good questions in that of how do we want to parse out these details. I think the goals are probably in alignment with the goals of the ballot question and the whole 2C funding question. So that can be answered, you know, with the rental assistance. And there are rental assistance programs that exist out there. This one has just some specific creativity to it, in that it asks employers, our local employers, and specifically smaller employers, if they want to help be part of the solution of their issue of finding employees that can actually live in town and have longevity to their work. So I really like the program. I want to be supportive of it, but I'm wondering if it would be okay to give the direction we gave tonight and ask Kevin to come back at, say, the first meeting in December with those details and then do the final vote on it for the funding. Just a suggestion.
Before you two, I guess I'm gonna jump in really quickly and say, I guess I have some hesitation in this, probably for a lot of the same reasons that Counselor Weimer does. I also look back at our housing study, and our housing study told us that 78% of our workforce drive into Glenwood. If 78%, so this is saying 22% where this, the way that you have read it means that this will go to the 22% that live and work here. But does that also, how many of those actually rent? Yeah,
So
yeah.
sorry. So maybe I'm confused
Okay.
because the way I believe I worded it, in order to qualify for the rent,
Mhm.
you have to rent an apartment or a place, excuse me, a unit in Glenwood and work for a Glenwood employer or
Yeah.
8161, whatever.
I know.
But if you live in Rifle right now
Mhm.
or Newcastle and your employer's here and you sign a lease in
Mhm.
Glenwood Springs, like, I think that's the intent.
To get people into town. I
Yes.
get that. I get that. But I think that this is touching on, I mean, and I recognize, how do you eat an elephant? We have a housing crisis. So I do have a little bit of an objection there, even though I see that the value is to get people living up here. But I also heard that last piece. I have a son who works for a solar company that he does have to drive to Carbondale, but then like 4 of them all get in a truck and they go wherever. And this would exclude them. He would not qualify because they do work, they leave the area when they do work, they don't just stay here. So I feel like what's that?
No,
That
I'm
was
just
John.
gonna clarify. I think earlier it was stated that they just had to hold a business license.
No, but Jonathan changed that.
No.
No.
Yes, he did.
No, he just said
Prioritize.
Prioritize,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, not
Okay.
And if that's a
Okay.
sticking point, I can
Yeah.
take that out.
Okay.
Yeah.
If that's a sticking point.
I feel like you guys remember the refrigerator when we were trying to do the little kitchenettes? I feel like we're doing kitchenettes up here tonight. I feel, and whenever we get to this point and we're trying to redesign it up here on the dais, I'm like, whoa. So that's how I feel. I feel like it's too premature. I kind of want you not to go back to the drawing board, but fine tune, and then maybe come back to us. That's where I'm at.
So
There's a lot of detail in the packet, actually.
I still had it. Yeah, I still want.
Okay. Okay, you're on, Erin.
All right, okay. I think that there comes a time where you have to start somewhere, and I think that we're micromanaging just a little bit. Maybe that is why you feel that way, Ingrid. I don't know. I wasn't part of that particular conversation, but I'm sitting here listening going, I think if we were to ask them to go back and answer these questions that we have, there would be assumptions made. I think you could just make something up, right? Best guess, best case scenario. We'll do this. I don't know that you know until you know. And I think the only way you know is by having a trial pilot program. It's well thought out. There's an employer who's already kind of doing something that's similar that, has initiated this. And so there is some foundation underneath it. I feel like we're talking ourselves out of doing something that might make good sense. We have put in a request to reevaluate. And so if there's something about it that doesn't feel right, if there's something about it that needs being changed, we will know that within the 6-month pilot program period. So I don't know. I guess I could ask you, do you think that if we asked you to go back and address some of these good questions that we've had, do you feel that there is a chance that you could with the information that's out there, or is the reason that we don't have answers because you don't know because we haven't done the program?
Oh, yeah, it's a good question. I think, so in my experience, just in government in general, the programs that are really run well are the ones where a council or commission gives staff sort of high level, guidance and, you know, tells them kind of go forth and sort of implement this at a high level, right? And staff is here. I think we have a competent staff in community development that we can sort of make a lot of these decisions sort of on the ground, sort of in the trenches, so to speak. A lot of times it's difficult to sort of socially engineer these concepts before a program is rolled out, right? And I think that's sort of what we're contending with right now. And so, again, I think to answer your question, I think that the program conceptually is well thought out. But I do think there are details that we need to figure out, and those are best made, in my experience, those are best made sort of while you're in the trenches trying to contend with real life situations that you have to respond to. It's always impossible to anticipate every situation, especially with something like this, especially when it's never been done before, because I don't know of any other communities in Colorado that have done this. And so we could go back to the drawing board all day and come up with if this, then that, and you know, kind of choose our own adventure. But we're never going to anticipate every scenario. And so that's, in my personal experience in government, that's sort of how I've seen the best sort of decisions made is sort of a high level. The guidelines and information that Councilmember Godis, is that how you say it?
Mm-hmm.
That you provided was perfect. That is exactly what we were looking for to go off of. And so if council agrees with that, you know, that'll give us enough direction to move forward with a pilot and then come back with meaningful input for council.
Thank you.
Counselor Weimer.
I think just to wrap up or double tap or whatever you want to say, there's no rush on this. This does not need to be approved tonight. And I don't think this is micromanaging. I think this is just us being responsible and thoughtful about how we're spending money, is all it is. And I don't know that I could articulate to a good enough degree what the program is and isn't, and KPIs and measures of success, and is this a business program or is this a rental assistance program? Is it both? I just think that there's some high level, and this, Kevin, this isn't about competence or confidence in you, right? It's just that I feel like this has been, it feels like it's been a little bit rushed and pushed to be in front of us tonight. Zero harm in us having this conversation, asking those good questions, and seeing you in 6 weeks, right? And having much more specificity around what it is that the pilot is and is not, and the goals, and how do we grade it as a success, and what are those key assumptions you're trying to validate, and what are some of those things around the fringe that you're trying to play with versus, the core, approach to the program, kind of figuring it out as we go. And no doubt that you could do it. I just don't know that this has to be done tonight, and I would totally support and love seeing you again in 4 or 6 weeks so that we could feel much better about what this is.
Counselor Godis, and then we'll call the question.
I don't think we're designing a fridge here. If the prioritizing businesses demonstrating they have employees that work in Glenwood Springs was that to some members of council, I'm happy to take that out of the motion. If no, okay. I mean, the staff, based on their many hours of work, their multiple reports, the WFAB's many meetings over the last year working on this, has given us a recommendation. There's 2 questions asked: what size employer and where is the location of both the business and the employee have to be? They asked 2 questions. We answered those 2 questions. Everything else is up to the professional staff. I think it was incredibly well thought out. If it doesn't pass, it doesn't pass, but I don't know. I guess my question to Shelley and Mitchell is, I have not heard, and maybe I haven't been listening, what questions specifically, or what what are the specifics you would like to see that they can address? Because I don't know. I mean, I guess maybe Kevin, what have you heard from us that you need to come back? Because I worry that if we come back here in a month, it's going to be the exact same report, maybe with a little, maybe a prioritization, but then I think we'll probably pick on the prioritization and we'll get wrapped around that axle. So in the spirit of not getting wrapped around the axle and designing fridges,
Kitchenettes.
kitchenettes,
Kitchenettes.
excuse me.
Let's just be really clear.
Yes.
Kitchenettes.
I think I'd like to see if it passes and also ask Kevin, what more information would you provide to us in a month that you have not provided tonight? Or how would your recommendations or information differ in a month based on what you heard tonight? And this goes for Hannah as well.
I think, you know, if council is interested in making this more prescriptive for staff to administer, we could come back with either a set of questions for council and, you know, for example, on the administering and prioritizing folks, like there's many ways to do it. And I don't know if staff has the information at this point to decide how to do that. So if we take applications based in the order in which they're submitted, or prioritize based on where somebody lives or how much money they make. Like those are the kinds of questions I guess we would maybe work out with council. But again, those are also the kinds of questions that I'm not sure is in the best interest to make before the program has been sort of rolled out. And the reason I say that is because when there's a high level approval of something, it gives staff the flexibility to pivot sort of in the moment and make decisions based on sort of real-time data. So I don't know, a lot of times if it's prudent to be overly prescriptive on things like that. We can certainly come up with a list of things that will eventually need to be worked out once the program is sort of rolling. But I don't know if we will have an answer for council to as a recommendation, because we won't have clarity on what to do yet, because we don't have any data.
Okay, well, Counselor Kelp, but really truly, I think we need to move forward
on, yeah.
or not move forward, but
Well,
I think, yeah, go ahead.
I had a question because Counselor Godus just asked,
Mhm.
you know, what kind of things might you come back with? For example, you came up with no more than 15 employees. I don't really know where the cutoff is. Like some of the local restaurants, how many people do they employ? I don't know if it will exclude some of our local businesses that we might be able. So should that number be 15? Should that number be 25? I'd almost rather let staff decide that. If we give the guidance of, we want to target small local businesses and not set that number. So, but I appreciate Counselor Weimer's questions of what specifically, who, you know, and some of it's in the white paper, and I appreciate that, Kevin. It's, but what specifically are we trying to achieve with this program? Who are we targeting? And then, yes, I would prefer to leave the details to staff. I feel like we're getting too prescriptive here. So I'm actually I'm not adverse to approving this tonight to go forward, but I appreciate the need to want to maybe see more specifics and details too. So, but I think staff will get there either way, whether you bring it back in a couple months or not. They still need to put that in place before the program goes live on January 1.
So before I call the question, I'm going to say, if it fails, I would love to see you do exactly what you said you think is the best route. And that is that before we approve it, just fine tune it. Give me more details, dig in a little bit more. Give me some better parameters so that I really feel confident that this is going to get in the pilot program, get allocated to the demographic that we can see most benefit from this. So let's call the question.
All right.
Yes, Counselor Zelinski, no Mayor Wusso, yes, Counselor Gotis, yes, Mayor Pro Tem Dane, no Counselor Weimer, no Counselor Kaup. It's a tie. 3-3, it fails.
It fails. So tie on our charter is a failure. So.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for your efforts. We can make another motion.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. Counselor Kaup, we'll give Counselor Kaup a turn.
Okay.
Okay. I will move that we, in the matter of the employer-based rental assistance program, that is recommended that we direct staff to move forward with crafting the details of the program based on targeting small local businesses and to bring the more details and objectives of the program back to council at the first meeting in December for final approval.
Unless you think
Does
you
that
could
work?
come back sooner. And if you guys think you could, work with Steve and get it on the agenda.
Okay,
Mhm.
sounds good.
Is that
That's a motion
specific
though.
enough?
Yeah. I think that's,
Can I clarify?
Sure.
yeah, for sure.
So you're voting for, that motion is for approval?
Or is it
No,
just
to
direction?
give direction to staff to
Mhm.
add more details to the program, targeting small businesses, and then bring it back to council no later than the first meeting in December for final approval.
Okay.
And I don't think it actually, from like you can tell us, it's not like an ordinance or something, so it doesn't need to be continued or anything, because if we're just giving staff direction, am I correct?
That's correct. I mean, the motion is great because it gives us some specific
Mhm.
parameters on what we're bringing back to you.
Okay, so I'll look for a second then. Okay.
Well,
Did you have
Yeah.
other details? in
If-
there?
So if there's a motion, do you want more? Okay. go
just
ahead.
a point of order on that. If we're intending to roll this out on January 1st, December, the first meeting in December gives precious little time for after we make the decision finally, and staff has that direction to then market that to get applications and then to roll it out. Is there a reason you couldn't have this by the first meeting of November?
I will need to discuss it with the city manager and with community development director.
Yeah, I said by then.
By then, okay, okay.
It's back early.
I would say as soon as possible, but I'll second the motion then.
Either way, they've
Okay.
got a year, so if it rolls out in January or February of 2025, when they're ready to go with the marketing and everything.
Okay.
Does that, I guess my question for you, since you did the first motion, is, does that meet enough detail? I do agree with we gave direction on the, they have to live within 81601, but be employed
There's
in.
two C boundaries.
Yeah.
If we wanna just
So the
say-
same
if I-
boundaries.
If
as
I
two
may,
C.
Yeah.
Yeah,
everybody out there in the audience was scribbling notes furiously, so I think they're pretty clear on what
good.
guys' points of discussion
Yeah,
was.
thank
And we
So
have
I
a
don't
whole
think you
work
need to
session.
overthink it at this point.
Perfect.
I would just say for the next discussion that I think Mayor Wusso's comment of let's not, like, if we have one thing, like, oh man, you have to, this is like, my vote is dependent on this minor thing. Sure, and I would say if those thoughts come up in the next couple of weeks, please let staff know.
Right.
Because I've just heard some like, well, it's not quite baked, and what's small bit, like, come back and tell us what small business is, tell us what, an average restaurant, that's a fair question. I mean, I just was listening to, Matt Spidell say, I have 10 FTEs.
Yeah.
I had 50% more, went, okay, that's the number, so.
Yeah.
Not super scientific, happy to
But-
hear.
More specificity on, these are the objectives, these are the,
Okay.
I think it was heard.
If I may.
Development Director Klaus, please give us. some
Yes.
direction.
I think Carl was referring to my very quick scribbling of notes, so I'm just going to throw out a bullet list of what I caught. If you want to throw something out and add it, and then we can wrap this up, I think that sounds great. Specifics that you guys are wanting on the prioritization and how that's going to happen. Location of the business and home and making that very specific. Size of employees on the actual businesses, how the vetting is going to happen for the applications, and a little bit more on lease specifics and timelines.
Great.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Counselor Gotis.
I would say the one thing that I heard from us that
Mhm.
maybe you didn't I didn't hear you, Casher, is focus on small business, whatever small business means.
She said that.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, we're gonna call the question. Thank you.
It passes. It's unanimous.
And you feel really clear about it?
Super.
Great. Thank you. Okay,
Thank you.
thank
Thank you.
you. Yeah. Okay, we are, does anybody need to take a break? No, okay. Then we're gonna move right along to item number 17, local landmark designation, 1109 Pitkin Avenue.
Council, Emery Ellingson, Community Development. I'll be sharing my screen. Okay, so this is an application for a local landmark. If you'll recall at the work session with Historic Preservation Commission, this was something that they had mentioned, and we talked about kind of the differences between when you have a local landmark, so individual structure, and a district. And so in this case, this is a local landmark where the individual property owner would like to landmark one of the structures on the property. And that property is at 1109 Pitkin. So again, what the action is for council to approve, deny, or continue the application. And this went to Historic Preservation Commission at their September meeting, and they made a recommendation for approval. The minutes were in the packet. And so I just wanted to walk through, since it's been a while since council has had a local landmark application, I just wanted to go through some of the criteria. And these are the same criteria that Historic Preservation Commission used. And then also all of these criteria match for if someone was to ever to apply for National Register. So they do match across the different levels. So first off, proposed landmark must be at least 50 years old. The structure in question was built in 1940, and so it meets that requirement. And then the other two, and I will say that there is a degree of subjectiveness with some of these, more than some of the stuff that community development deals with. But the property or structure has to have significance in terms of history and architecture, and then also integrity. And there's just different location, design, setting, different aspects of the property. And I'll just go through those with a brief explanation. So as far as this particular structure, staff found it had historic and architectural significance. And the reason being is it is a good example of what was a style called rustic architecture. So between the 1930s and 40s, you saw a lot of log cabins. The one on the upper left, that's the Summers Lodge. It's here in Glenwood. That's a house that's on the National Register. So you saw both private residences. That's the two, I guess it'd be, yeah, on the left, private residences, and then also government. So a lot of WPA, CCC projects had this style. And so the property right here, this is the structure. There are two structures on the property. The one that's the subject of the landmark application is the one pictured here. That was built in 1940. And there's actually a second structure on the property as well that was built at a later date. That is not the subject of this application. So you can see it's in pretty good condition compared to probably when it was originally constructed. There are some windows in kind of that peak area that were probably added at a later date. But for the most part, this is a pretty good example of that style of architecture, which is why it is significant. So that's one of the categories. And then the other one is integrity. And so there's these 7 different categories that I'll go through in a second. And you don't have to have all 7, but they have to be evident to the point where, you know, council would find that it's eligible to be a landmark. So I'll go through each one of these. So first one's location is where that property was constructed. So this is the Cardiff Schoolhouse. That's not its original location. That property is actually a local landmark. So that's a case where its other qualities maybe overcame the fact that it's not in its original location. Generally, yeah, kind of Cardiff area, but it's been moved, I think, twice. So that's one category. Another is design and just what elements of design make it that thing. So this is a Russian Orthodox church in Cleveland. If you took off all the domes, you might not know it's a Russian Orthodox church anymore. So that's what the design aspect of it is.
Cool.
Setting, what the area around the landmark is. So a good example is the Alamo. San Antonio has changed since the actual historic event occurred. So that's what that category speaks to. Materials, so good example with this proposed landmark, it's a log cabin. You can definitely tell it's a log cabin, and those are the materials that were used. So these examples are some limestone structures in Texas, hill country, because that's a common building material there. So that's what this category touches on. Workmanship, so physical evidence of crafts of a particular people or culture. So these two photos in the St. Louis area, you can tell if something was built by French settlers because they built their log cabins with vertical logs instead of horizontal. So that's an example of this particular category. So you can see church going vertical. Feeling, so this is very subjective, but again, it's the property's expression of the historic sense of the time. This is obviously a very historical facade. This is in Charleston, South Carolina. What kind of feeling does that give you of history? A little bit of both. And then finally, association. So that's just the direct link between an important historic event or person. So this is the Molly Brown house in Denver. That's where Molly Brown lived. So a very direct link between property and historic event or person. So there aren't any public comments submitted. Suggested conditions, when something is a landmark, what happens to it is that any future modifications to it that are exterior would have to come through Historic Preservation Commission for approval. And so that's just, those conditions speak to that. And then finally, so again, Historic Preservation Commission's recommendation was for approval. Staff also recommends approval, and then the applicant is here as well if you have any questions for him. So stop sharing my screen.
Emery, that was my most favorite presentation of the year. That was awesome. Any questions? Counselor Weimer.
I was gonna just say, yeah, Emery, you make all your presentations. Just
For it, yeah.
tell us stories
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
every, yeah, it's nice, thanks.
Yeah, I mean, it was, yeah. It was,
Is there, any- sorry, is there any benefit to the homeowner?
oh.
Is there a benefit? So as part of this designation process, is there a benefit? So the structure is protected, right? As you just, is there a benefit? Are there tax benefits, et cetera, to the homeowner?
Yeah, so at the local level, if this property were landmarked, the property owner would be eligible for a tax rebate for the city's mill levy. So the way that works is every year they'd pay their property taxes in full. And then they'd go to Garfield County, get the receipt, bring it back to the city and get a rebate on their mill levy. So I think for this property, it's somewhere between $400 and $500, which again, that would change, as property values change. And that is in perpetuity. So that's the local level. And then at the state level, property owner be eligible for preservation tax credits. That's the state approves those and reviews those, but being a landmark makes it eligible for that, just to submit an application.
Any other questions? Okay, the applicant, you want to come up? Is there anything you want to provide? I'm guessing, I'm making an assumption you're the applicant. Yeah, come on up. Yeah. If you want to just give us a little bit of background on, how you.
Sure,
Yeah.
and I'm happy to do that. I'm Bob Campbell, and I live on the property and in the other building that's not the structure in question. First, let me say, Shelley, as a community member and one of your constituents, I'd like to echo the gratitude that was expressed earlier, sentiments of all your dedication, hard work over the years. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. And then I'd also like to acknowledge the efforts of community development and the Historic Preservation Commission, because this wasn't on my radar at all.
Okay.
And it was a chance encounter with an outreach pop-up at the market on 7th.
Okay.
Which I organized the music for all summer. That led to kind of the questions of, is this building eligible? Is it have some of the qualities that would make it eligible? And through the encouragement of particularly the community development department and the commission, we went through this process. So
That's awesome.
That's how
Thank
we
you
got
for
there.
that background. Yeah.
you know,
Does anybody have questions for Bob? Anybody have any questions for him? Okay. Well,
we're not sure if the logs came from the Rippey sawmill.
you know I'm a Rippy.
Yeah, so we did,
Yeah.
you know, it was kind of fun to do
Yeah.
some investigating and with the help of some of the folks that work at the Frontier Museum, you know, and
Yeah.
down in the basement and pouring through some of the archives. There was some thought about that, but there's not really a way to identify where these logs, but they were undoubtedly locally sourced at that.
That likely it would have been at that time in history
Yeah.
because it was the, the major mill at that time in the 20s. So
Exactly.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Thank you for mentioning that.
Sure.
Well, with that, we'll go ahead. We are trying to make a habit of just asking for public comment. So we'll open it for public comment. If anybody has anything they want to give acknowledgement to. Don't know that we have anybody this evening. Anybody online? Okay, well, then I will bring it back to council.
Thank you. In item 17, local landmark designation 1109 Pitkin Avenue, I would move that we approve this local landmark designation based on the community development staff report.
Counselor Zelinski.
I would like to second.
Okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
thank you. And Emery, like the whole team that brought this. This is the fun stuff. So we really appreciate it. Thank you for paying homage to the history of Glenwood.
Yeah. Hope that there are more such designations. There's a lot of unique properties.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, will you pass that to Steve? Okay. Okay, we're moving on to item number 18. Our city manager, Steve Boyd, is at the podium. This is the budget.
We crowdsourced you a lot.
We did.
Where's my budget?
There's 2025 budget.
It's in the email if you want your budget to open it, guys.
Taste the same.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor, Council. My name is Steve Boyd. I am your city manager. I'm also a resident of Glenwood Springs. I'm happy to be both on most days. This is the submittal of the 2025 budget. There are 81 slides here. Unfortunately, if you've spent any time with me this week, you know I've got a little bit of a cough. So the good news is this isn't going to take very long. But we'll run through this real quick. So we can start with Parks and Rec. That's our Parks and Rec Jedi right there. That's Rod.
Yeah, you got to share your
I
screen.
didn't share my screen. I did the same thing last year, I think. My bad. And Zoom.
Right there.
Share my screen.
It seems really stupid.
This one.
No, sure. There we go.
Okay. Slideshow. Okay, is everybody ready? We ready? Okay, Parks and Rec. You can see it now. There's our Jedi. Rod. We had a fire this year in the Parks building, and it really kind of defined their year. We went through and we looked at it, and you can see the damage up here. Our insurance company decided they could fix it. And the problem with that is that this is now their work area. It's in the mall over here, and it's very hard to get things done. They were disorganized, they were disjointed, they just kind of had a hard time of it. Through that, we still got some stuff done. We did the needs assessment. We did all kinds of events and stuff and programs and, murals and everything else in the world. So it ended up being a pretty decent year for them. Public safety, our police department is better staffed than it has been in a very long time. So we're happy about that. The team spent a lot of time training and, active threat training at the high school with young children screaming and yelling. I mean, they suited me up and they made me go out here. And I will say that if you have a chance to do that, you might consider it. That was a life changer for me. There was one moment in that day in my life that I'll certainly never forget. So thanks for that. Lots of safety talks, lots of time spent with kids. Good job, police. You guys finished replacing their fleet. I think we're completely up to speed now on their fleet. In fire, I don't know what to say. We we had a legend retire. So we're moving on. The Parks building fire, they were on scene in something like 2 minutes and 15 seconds. And Rod and I were like, just let it burn so we can replace the building.
This is a public.
Oh, yeah, sorry. So we had stuff, we always have stuff for the year, right? I don't know what that is, and I don't know what that is, but whatever. Wildfire preparedness, Doug did that presentation. He was there. We have a ladder truck. They took me up in it. They wanted to show me the platform and how the platform operates. And at one point, I'm pretty sure Ryan Wyckoff tried to throw me off, but it didn't work. Lots of strategic planning, lots of just kind of behind the scenes training and stuff that they did this year. Public Works, this was a long time in the making. That's our modular office. The wastewater plant gives them a little bit more room and has worked out pretty well. Lift station, old picture, but it's about done. Steel railings, we replaced everywhere on the 12th Street Bridge. There's some some more Blake stuff that they did. This is 6th Street, moving along. 24th Street is finished. Downtown alleys, they're kind of working on now. Southbridge, we keep moving forward on. There's 27th Street underpass. We didn't really do that project, but you guys paid for part of it. So it made a slide. Here's our landfill. We renewed a couple of leases and we got this BOMAG, which is pretty cool. It's a compactor. And when I went up there with Liz and we were looking at, some stuff, there's these bears, these huge bears that go down on these big piles of garbage. And it's really fascinating to just kind of watch them pig out, right? And then they'll go and they'll jump in the leachate pond and they'll like lay on their backs and stuff. I mean, it's one of the coolest things that you'll ever see. It's not a very good picture, but that is a big bear on his back with his feet up, hanging out. In administration, Yvette presented to you guys another clean audit. We'll have the same thing that we just finished up in 2024. Very sorry Yvette can't be here tonight. The budget is kind of her thing. Everybody knows she does.
She's online. Shout out. She's online.
And she has been not feeling great. I mean, if she could be here, she would be here. I can testify to that. But anyway, we had lots of core requests. I think Ryan set a record in all the core requests that we put in this year. Ryan spent a lot of time with our insurance company. And this was one example. This was kind of, the mudslides. He's really done a lot to reduce our insurance costs and spent a lot of time there. Outreach, there's Bree. We did all kinds of stuff like we always do. I'll just kind of cruise through some of that stuff. Cultural diversity, underpass. This is Hazardous Waste Day. We made 3 very significant cybersecurity upgrades this year. It's been a couple of years in the making, but we threw out all of this stuff. We put everything in the cloud. We went to a third-party, third-factor authentication. We are much more secure today than we were, say, 8 months ago. ERP implementation, this is ComDev's term. And if you've been following along with the ERP stuff, there's what it looks like in the morning. Everybody's, paying attention and ready to go. There's what it looks like in the afternoon. And then by the time you get to the evening, it looks like that. So, thank you, Hannah and her team. They have spent a lot of time. It's very, very difficult. When they finish this, it's going to change the game. Just the public portal alone will make everything better for everybody. So it's a lot of hard work to get through, and they finished up the climate action plan. So let me tell you, before we get to actually what's in this budget, what's going well. One of the things that we have spent a lot of time on this year is kind of succession planning, and there's more money in this budget in professional development than we've ever had before. One of the things that we've been doing in hiring is just making sure that we've got the discipline to get it right. And when you look at the last few hires that we've had kind of in the middle, in the heart of our organization, we got it right in every single case. And a lot of these jobs went out 2 or 3 different times.
Yeah.
But the team had the discipline to say, we're not going to do it. We're going to wait and we're going to hire the person that's right for the job. I feel fantastic about our recent hires in every single case. That guy looks like, he is smart. Jacob is very smart. So here are your strategic goals. We tie these to every agenda item that we do. You guys are very familiar with those. So let's talk about what's in this budget. Total budget of $110 million. That is after carryovers. So the number would be a little bit higher, but we carry stuff over every year. That's going to be about a 4% increase from last year's budget. We had 24 funds, and you can see the breakout there. Our general fund at the bottom has 18 different departments in it. Here's our available reserves: 11 million in the general fund, 2.7 in capital projects, 8 million in A&I. We feel pretty good about those levels. 28.6 million total appropriation in the general fund. That's also up 4% from 2024 revised budget. 60% of that is salaries and benefits. 40% we spend on public safety, 20% park and rec, and then everything else is in our general departments, from engineering to legal to comp dev to finance, IT, HR, all that kind of stuff. And then our reserves are about 34% of 2025 forecast expenditures. So those are all in pretty good shape. This budget is very blue collar. What you don't see in this budget is a lot of beautification projects. You don't see a lot of studies. We have $10,000 in to begin a river corridor master plan if we choose to do that. And then Matt has got in capital projects money in for a stormwater master plan that we're required to get in MS4. So I guess that's it. We've been through, I think, all of the budgets. I sent this out to everybody a little while ago. Sarah will post it online. Public hearing 2 weeks from tonight. Then you guys will vote to approve the budget 4 weeks from tonight. So that's it. I'll drop the mic right there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Wait, hold on 1 second. Before you walk away, I do have questions. Okay. Counselor Gotis. Who's doing a presentation?
It's related to this presentation, but not the budget in specific. But it's a request. Could we please get these things put in our packet?
Yeah.
Because I think the public, there's been a number of times where I'm like, just recently a friend of mine said, "Oh, wow, that art going up on 27th Street roundabout's awesome." I was like, yeah. And I want to show you some of the other stuff that's going on because this person's really interested in art. And I went to the packet because I know we had a presentation that showed the different things, but it wasn't in our packet. And I think it's really important for the community, especially when we're talking about budgets or whatever, to have a presentation like this so they can access it. And I don't know where that presentation goes, if it goes on our webpage, if it goes in our packet, but definitely not at 821 getting it emailed to where if the public wants to see it, they have to do a court request.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, we can both.
can we do better just in general about getting stuff in our packets? Thank you. I appreciate it, Steve. And the presentation was fantastic, by the way.
It was fast.
Yeah, great.
Any other questions or comments, observations? Okay. Well, Steve, you have quite a few ninjas working on your team.
That's
And
true.
all of those new hires, we are getting to know them and we agree. They've been wonderful additions to this team. So, and to PD, you guys have some new additions that their faces didn't make it up there, but we're really grateful for them. Yeah, definitely. Okay, great. Well, with that in mind, we are moving on to council comments. Anybody have anything? Counselor White.
Just quick updates from meeting earlier this week, River Commission. They had a joint meeting with Parks and Rec previously, and it was like unanimous that they just thought that was like so productive. And I think we could start, we've been pushing for these councils and these committees, to have more cross-pollination. And I think they're really seeing the benefit of that. And so I would expect more of that in support in the future. They are moving forward with help in defining the RFP for the Master River Corridor Plan that Steve just mentioned. So they just want some structure, some outside thinking, and some consulting help to help them think through what does the RFP need to sort of look like and contain. The 3 Mile project is going very well. They're wrapping things up out there. We are fixing to meet out there in November, the River Commission, planning to meet out there. Aaron is making us coffee and cinnamon rolls. I think we discussed cinnamon rolls, Aaron. Don't get out of it. And contemplating the installation of a zebra mussel washing station at Two Rivers and kind of what would be involved in that. The state has plenty of those stations. That wouldn't be a part, it's not about cost or anything. It's more about kind of getting it in there, making it work, maintaining it, et cetera. So I just continue to be really impressed with the River Commission and how committed they are and what they do. It's pretty awesome.
Aaron, Counselor Zelinski.
So to piggyback on that, last night Parks and Rec Commission had a joint work session with the Transportation Commission. And again, really, really good collaboration, communication. One thing that really hit me was talking about a lot about bicycles, a lot about commuting traffic and moving through our community and where the needs, between different users on our trails. We talked about setting some standards around e-bikes on our trails, which is something that came directly from the community. And so, I think we can look forward to seeing some answers to those questions. One thing that really struck me is the City of Glenwood Springs, and this came from Ralph Trapani. City of Glenwood Springs leads, I think he said the national average. Well, Grand Avenue in particular. So Glenwood Springs is like 70% over the national average for pedestrian and cyclist accidents, which just about blew my mind. And then, the other was, rear ends on Grand Avenue, which doesn't surprise me a bit. But then I'm just going to reiterate, there is a survey that is being pushed out that talks about safety on our transportation corridors, whether those are trails, whether those are roads. These are really valuable information. I have seen social media exploding over the last week with a lot of thoughts. A lot of people in our community have thoughts, and this is your time to express those thoughts so that we can hear them. So I encourage you to participate so that we can make good choices moving forward that really respects the concerns and priorities of the community. And that's all I got.
Counselor Godus.
My comments at the beginning of the meeting about the lack of results from our council directed tourism study. I wanted to say I really appreciate the due diligence staff has done to not just do an RFP process and take, whatever. I think, getting independent third-party analysis and getting a good report that's reflective of the information is better than a biased report. So thank you very much for that due diligence. But I think it is a council-directed vote that we did take that we wanted for the budget conversation that we're not going to get. So is there a way by within the next month, we could at least get something back of what that looks like? So are we going to do it in-house? Or are we going to do another RFP? I don't need the answer now, just within the next month, kind of come back and just circle back to us based on that direction we gave 8 months ago, just so we can square that circle. And then I tried this before. I'm going to try this again. I'm going to make a motion that we enforce our sign code uniformly and without bias, beginning 1 week after the election. So that'll be November 12th. We start actually enforcing the sign code 070-040-100. Okay, motion dies for lack of second. I know that's your job. I'd like to now make another motion that we strike all references pertaining to temporary signs in our municipal code 070-040-100, specifically section 21 titled yard signs and section E titled prohibitive signs. Can we just strike that from our code since we're not going to enforce it? Is there a second? Okay. All right. Finally, I will not be at the next city council meeting until maybe 7:30 if I try really, really hard and break the speed limit in other communities, not ours.
No communities. Drive safely.
Just in Wayland.
Just drive
I understand that Counselor Dame will not be here at the next council meeting. Counselor Kaup will be retired.
Mhm.
Is there any other counselors? And I'm asking this
I think there'll be
because,
4 of us at
Okay.
that meeting.
okay.
Mhm.
Just wanted to make sure because if I had to, I could move a lot of things around, but as long as.
Well, I'll be moving a lot of things onto the agenda.
Then I strike my last comment. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. Well, it's interesting that we talk about enforcement because I got a text earlier today regarding the 27th Street underpass project. And it is from those who work on the site. And they indicated that they had had a rough day on the project with a damaged signal head from a dump truck. But the city of Glenwood Springs PD went above and beyond directing traffic and helping us endure and get it repaired by 6:30 tonight. No words to describe such extreme praise for Chief Darris and Lieutenant Hassel. And just wanted to make sure that that shout out got out there. You guys are doing your job, except for enforcing sign code. You guys are killing it. You're killing it. Yeah, and doing, yeah. But I don't want to make light of it. I really do appreciate it, that the movement right there, the number of people, I think that Ben Ludlow with RAFTA at one point said, almost 30,000 cars are coming through there some days. And that is such an extreme amount of vehicles moving through. And it is a huge responsibility for our community, for you. And we appreciate you and all of your officers. So thank you.
Thank you.
The next thing is that in an earlier work session, I just wanted to make sure that, that the community knows that we are hearing or wanting to hear the voices from youth members of the community. And so we worked earlier with our legal counsel to add a youth representative to all our boards and commissions. I'm very excited for this. We now have 2 permanent ones on arts and culture and parks and rec. We have an ad hoc member who is a Burgess student who is on our transportation commission. And now we'll be seeing them on all the other ones once we make that charter change. So I'm really looking forward to that. But it's also an invitation to kids out there to be on the lookout, that this is, there are a few other boards and commissions, or in future years, we're working out the details, but I look forward to having the voices of our youth on our boards and commissions. And that is very exciting. And then I also had one other thing. And actually, I think I have 2 other things. One is that there is a hands-free cell phone bill that is getting implemented on January 1st. I would like the rollout of that to be big and bold. And I'd like the community to really know in December this is happening, because, to Counselor Zelinski's point, if we have that many accidents, when we have that many cars, we need to get people doing anything to reduce the number of accidents, especially as we encourage bike and ped. And so this is going to be a state law, January 1st of 25. And if we can work together to kind of push that, I see our PIO nodding her head that she'll work with us. So that would be a big goal. Thank you. I think she just said aye. Was it captain or chief, or what was it early? Chef. That was what it was. Chef. I don't know. So we're going to find out more details about that. And then I had one last thing. I've talked about it in circles individually whenever I get a chance, but I really want to dig in the next few months on the idea that we incentivize condominiumization in building, regardless of what the building, what is it, liability builder liability code. I think that if we change our code to integrate language, regardless if they build it to, immediately sell it as condos, but is there a possibility that we could incentivize that people at least put the infrastructure in there so that when when Habitat buys it, it's already there, or people can sell it off, whatever, even if they choose to be apartments initially. How do we do that to encourage And you don't have to
come-
answer that
yeah,
tonight,
Yeah,
right?
no, I can come back with some ideas on that.
Okay.
I mean, oftentimes we see that in building because, particularly on, kind of mid to smaller size projects, you recognize that 7 years from now or 10 years from now, you can go ahead and condominiumize. So things like separating utilities, oftentimes builders do that. But that's kind of the biggest one. And then really through the plan review process, building permit, to make sure that they're constructing, those are the places, the separation between units and then the separated utilities are the two big ones.
So if we could, I mean, maybe this is an opportunity for 2C money to kind of integrate into this. Maybe it's an opportunity for us to incentivize. I really think that's, if people can get into homes affordably and they actually have ownership opportunities, there's longevity for them staying in our community. And that's something that we have all prioritized. So that would be great. They talk about it. We can talk about that later. He asked if we can make ADUs for sale, and right now
No.
you could, no.
So,
it-
yeah, I mean,
Yeah, you could duplex it potentially, but the process, yeah. Hannah's gonna come back and talk to us another time about that. That was it for me. Anybody else up here have any other council comments? Shelley?
Miss everyone. But
Here.
that's not an official
Here.
comment, that's just a personal,
Okay,
it's a personal comment.
just a personal comment.
Okay.
What time is it?
I'll miss everybody. It is 8:46. No. that's-
So
I
let's
have
do report from city administration, and then Shelley is doing the announcement of the social event. So.
I'm good. Nothing for me.
I'm just gonna run through 3 or 4 real quick things. One, cast members are working together. I missed the call because I was here for the work session, kind of being organized going into the first CML policy committee meeting on Friday of next week, as far as kind of, trying to take that track and getting CML on board with some of the ideas that cast that you guys were supportive of going through cast. On the Shoshone acquisition, local matches are up to somewhere around $16 million. So, and we were targeting 16 million in local matches. We were targeting hopefully 20, so there's still some work to do there, but they've done a bang up job at the River District. In local communities coming in and supporting things like, Silverthorne, present for $100,000, things like that. I mean, you're seeing communities do.
To the 99.
We are, on the share that we were thinking about, we're about 4 million short. We need $40 million from the federal government. And that is one that, the mayor was very articulate and arguing for in front of the senators. That there is a notice of funding opportunity, a NOFO out there, through Bureau of Rec that's been extended, for about another month. That's going to be open, I think. They're hoping to be very competitive in that process, and that's where that money would be coming from. Obviously, there's going to be an election and there's going to be a new administration one way or the other. And so everybody's a little concerned about, just trying to get it done, and get it committed. So that's great. On the UNA rail line, we have had great conversations with other communities. That deadline for filing that amicus brief is the end of this month. I think we're going to have a really great group of communities really talking about in that amicus brief with stories about how NEPA is so critically important to us at the local level to make sure that we are engaged and we have a voice in these large federal projects and federal lands and things that happen to us. It's one of the few ways we can have our voices heard. So that's fantastic. Nothing much really going on in the Mitchell Cooper case. It's still kind of stalled out at the very beginning. And so we're just kind of riding that out. And I think that's everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Shelley, where are we heading?
Well, I think there are only 2 choices.
Yeah, I think we're
Okay.
I think we're down to docs.
Okay.
Yep.
There we go. Great. Well, then I will look for a motion to adjourn.
I so move.
Okay.
I move and second the same breath. Done.
That's